Welcome to Learning Aloud, a podcast from the Organizational Dynamics community at the University of Pennsylvania, produced to inspire purposeful leadership practice and transform organizational experience. I am your host, Stephen G. Hart. My guest today is Ellen Valudes, Vice President of the Dale Carnegie franchise in the Philadelphia region. Ellen has spent about 20 years working with organizations to encourage and develop their people, meet business demands, and align culture with strategic goals. She's focused on providing strategic talent management solutions to her clients. She's known for her ability to partner with all levels of leadership to support business initiatives, such as cultivating an engaged workforce, developing leadership, creating a client-centric culture, leveraging talent to manage and maximize business results and implement innovation. Ellen has consistently been recognized for her contributions to the Dale Carnegie Global Network for her success in sales and long-term client relationships. Throughout her career, she has worked with regional and global companies across all sectors. Ellen supports her business and civic community through involvement with the Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce, the Power of Professional Women, and organizations such as the United Way. She's frequently invited as a guest speaker and presenter at the International Dale Carnegie Convention power events and at a variety of local affinity groups and professional organizations. Ellen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. I've known you a while, and we've worked together perhaps for more than 10 years at least of that. And if I was to think about it, I would say if there's a theme arising from our conversation today at all, it might be something along the lines of unleashing the potential of the human side of an enterprise. So I wonder, what does that mean to you, and why is that important to you?
Well, the people in any enterprise, whether it's a small business or a large organization, are what distinguishes that organization from everybody else that does what they do. It's that unique special sauce that a company has. And when we have that ability to tap into the human potential to the best of the people in an organization, not only do they perform well, but the people are happy, they're engaged, they're excited, they're enthusiastic about what they're bringing to the table. They feel valued, and that's just a really energizing environment to work in. And who doesn't want to work in an energized environment? So for me, I've always looked at, one of my driving forces being, how do I help people bring out the giant within them? How do I help them tap into the best that they can be, and then watch what comes out of it. It's exciting.
What were some of the influences that got you into this business in the first place?
Well, when I look at my career history, I can see threads and experiences that ultimately led up to this. And you'll appreciate this working in HR for so many years. We always say that people leave managers, they don't leave companies. So back in 2001, I had to leave a manager. It was actually the new owner of a company that I worked for. And I loved the business. I loved the work I was doing, but the culture had become so toxic and really negative. And I knew that I didn't want to work in that type of environment. So I started talking with my contacts and my relationships, people that I'd worked with. And one of my friends that I worked with when I first came to Philadelphia in 1989 said, I just met an owner of a Dale Carnegie franchise at a wedding, and she's a friend of a friend. And, it just seems like that might be a good fit. It was one of those light bulb moments that I had. And based on what I knew about Dale Carnegie and all my experience and background, it was this natural progression of, her sending my resume and an initial phone call with the local franchise owner, and it just flowed beautifully, and it was a good fit from the very beginning.
So one of the central tenets of the Dale Carnegie experience is the power of networking, right? So clearly that worked out in your case here. Tell us a bit more about Dale Carnegie's approach to developing leaders and bringing out the best of people in organizations. Walk us through a typical Dale Carnegie workshop.
Oh, wow. Well, so a typical experience would be really giving leaders an opportunity to sort of hold up the mirror to begin with, right? So we have to have a certain level of self-awareness before we're open to and may want to consider that there are ways that we could develop as a leader. So we always look at how can we help people hold up the mirror in a compassionate way, not in a critical way, but recognize our strengths and look for some opportunities where we think we could grow as a leader. And then once that attitude of openness is there, once we have created that safe environment, learning environment for people to see, yeah, I'm good at this and maybe I could get better at that. It's only then that they're open to what's the new information or knowledge or experiences that might help them grow as a person and a leader. And that's critical, because until we can be open to what the possibilities are, lots of people don't really want to change. They're fine with who they are, and they look at their successes, and things don't really shift and transform from there. So any Dale Carnegie experience first is about holding up the mirror, really assessing our attitude, and being honest with ourselves about what our strengths are first and foremost, and then building on them from there.
Yeah, so I've seen you and the Dale Carnegie experience in action in an organization where I used to work. I've seen it then, and you always invited me to come and speak to the class the first night of class, and then 6 weeks later when it ended, to come back and see the transformation. And I always remarked on how this particular experience was going to be transformative in some meaningful way. So there's something happens in that process of holding up that mirror. Can you go a little bit deeper into what actually is going on in the mind and heart of somebody involved in one of the workshops? What are they experiencing and feeling, and how are they transforming?
Well, there's a really, I would say, unique methodology that we all look at and are expected to follow as trainers. And as a business leader, if you ask me to come into your organization and you have a particular performance goal that you want your people to meet, that things have to change a little bit, right? The behavior has to change a little bit. Well, it's not too difficult to get people to comply with behavior change. But where the transformation happens and where that wow factor comes in for people is when we look at how do we not only help them see that they can do things a little differently as leaders to get better results, to drive business performance, but the magic happens in helping them see themselves differently, right? How do we get them fundamentally to make an emotional shift? Because when they shift their attitude and their perspective about themselves emotionally, when they think they can see themselves as being capable of more, when they get excited about the possibility of how they could transform and grow and have a more positive impact on the people around them, that's when we're talking transformation. And that's what we look to create in a Dale Carnegie experience. It's not just behavior change to get performance. It's about that emotional shift that happens. And that's why you see people coming out of our experiences, whether it's a workshop or a seminar that's many sessions, energized, excited, feeling more empowered because they can see themselves differently. They've tried on some tools and they've actually done something differently and gotten good results that tells them, yeah, this works and I'm capable of it. And that just propels them forward with a really powerful momentum that can really impact the culture of an organization.
So I agree with everything that you just said, but I think there's another overlay that goes on that what I've observed in the workshops and in the way that you facilitate it is the encouragement of the learning community that is part of the process of this transformation. Talk a little bit about the power of the learning community and the way that people are mutually supportive of each other.
Right. Well, what we've known for over 100 years in Dale Carnegie is that people thrive in a positive, supportive, encouraging learning environment. So we're not constantly looking for what people are doing wrong, but we are building on their strengths and acknowledging their successes. So as a trainer, my goal is to offer positive feedback and coaching in the moment and to help people make those positive shifts immediately. And then their classmates are reflecting back to them the successes that they're seeing. They're energized by it. They're also giving them positive feedback and encouragement and reinforcement. So we create this community of people that together are going through a common experience. They're together being vulnerable enough to allow people to see where they know they can grow. They're telling stories that are examples of where maybe they haven't done things the way they wanted, but they also are trying new tools and new strategies out and seeing that they can grow and change and get better results. So together as a community, they're building relationships. There's a lot of trust. There's a lot of respect. There's a common language that they're speaking that is supportive and allows people to grow.
Yeah, and I've seen and witnessed many people in the going through the process. It also becomes very emotional for many people.
Yep.
Why do you think that it really hits that emotional nerve up for people when they go through the kind of transformative learning that you're engaged in?
Well, I'm not sure I have the perfect answer, but I think it's a combination of an environment that allows them to be open enough and vulnerable enough to be honest about who they are. And that means tapping into emotions. I think it's that people see that there is a giant inside of them, that they are capable of more, and that with just a little bit of a tweak and a little bit of encouragement by a trainer or a colleague, that they can get past their fears. Because that's essential to what we do in that training room, is we help people get through the hard stuff, right? We all have fears. We all have had past experiences that cause us to go, oh, no, I can't deal with conflict at work because I'm afraid this is going to happen. But when we have some tools and we have that support and coaching, and we actually take that risk to go to a place where either we have had a failure in the past or we haven't been before, when we go there and it works, it fills somebody up. It fills them up with confidence. It fills them up with more belief in themselves. That's the emotional wow that happens, and it does get emotional. It does get emotional. When people see that they're capable of more and they let themselves go there, it's a profound experience. And they let themselves go there while others observe. How powerful is that?
Yeah, a big part of this is sort of re-engaging with the person that sponsors you to attend this, right? So that's that last night or last evening or event when the sponsors are present to hear the testimony of people who've gone through the experience is an immensely powerful connector. And I've seen people break down and have real catharsis of confronting and overcoming things. So what are some of the successes that you've observed over the career that you've had in this field? What are some standout stories of transformation that you might remember?
Well, I'll have to go back to, and they're all huge and transformational to each individual. They may not be big wow stories to other people, but the experience to that individual is a wow. So one that I think of with the last group that I worked with at your previous employer, I had a woman in class and she said to me, she worked in an area where she had a lot of responsibility and no authority to get people to do what they had to do for her to complete her job. And so she came into a session and she's like, Helen, I don't know what to do. I can't finish my job unless this person sends me the documents that I'm asking for. And I'm emailing her, I'm calling her, and she's not responding. And so I said, well, let's think about it. Let's think about the Dale Carnegie principles and how we build rapport and build trust and respect with other people. I said, what do you think might happen if you just called her up and you said, look, we work together all the time and I don't really know you that well. And I think it would be fun for us to have coffee and get to know each other a little bit. It would be helpful for our working relationship. She was a little skeptical at first, but she's the type of person who takes responsibility and ownership of what she commits to. So that same day, she called her colleague, and the colleague immediately said, sure, that'd be great. Let's have coffee tomorrow morning. So first of all, she was a little surprised because she had a perception of her colleague that was not really favorable. And when she met this colleague for coffee, they sat down and she just started, the participant that I had in class just started asking her questions about herself and, making that attempt to get to know her on a personal level. And I coached her about this. I said, don't bring work up. Don't talk about work. This is about connecting with her on a personal level. So she said, not too far into the conversation, they had she was surprised that her colleague was open, was warm, was responsive. We had a nice conversation. She was starting to feel a connection with her. And the colleague said, I know you've been asking me for these documents and I haven't emailed you and I haven't really given you what you need. And she said, I have to rely on other people for what I do as well. But the long and short of the story is that they forged different connection by getting beyond work, by just getting to know each other and respecting each other as people and finding common ground. Their working relationship advanced in a more positive way. And the woman that I had in class, the participant said, this was like magic. She was surprised, she was encouraged, and it really propelled her to look at all of her work relationships in a different way, just because she took one step, one action, one risk to ask somebody to have coffee with her and to take the time to get to know her. So is that a huge success story? I mean, in and of itself, people may say no, but I have no doubt that was a pivotal moment in her professional and probably personal life to see the power of connection with other people and what it will do in personal and also working relationships.
Yeah, so you demonstrate what I think is a critical component then of this transformational learning is that it's really in the small moments that where we have successes. And also as a writer who I love to listen and write and read is Margaret Wheatley, who says, we really don't know who we are until we're in relationship with other people. So at the heart of our ability to be an effective leader and to be a productive citizen of an organization, we really have to pay attention to our relationships in order to unleash our own potential as well as that in others. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think back to being a teenager and being a time in my life where I was feeling insecure and not part of the group, and it was the actions of one or two people, the small actions that they took to reach out to me, to encourage me, to bring me into the fold, so to speak, that really helped me have the courage to blossom. And that was indicative to me of how powerful it is to support people, to offer positive feedback, to coach people. And it's not that it needs to be a huge connection. It's those, as you said, those small moments of time that start to turn how people see themselves and what they're capable of, and gives them the courage to do just a little bit more, to take another little risk and see that it can turn out well. So it's a progressive shift over time.
Yeah, what I used to tell people who were coming to your workshops at my previous place was that everybody is a leader. You may not have formal authority, But at heart, everybody is a leader. You're a leader of yourself, your own disciplines, and those
Right.
types of things. So how important is it for people to understand that they are a leader of themselves, even if they don't have formal authority? And how important is that as a precondition for really engaging in transformative learning?
Absolutely essential. In fact, one of the statements that we make in many of our programs up front is, who's the only person we can change? It's ourselves or other people. And highlight, most of the time we spend our time trying to change other people, and those other people don't usually like that. So if we want to make an impact, if we want to be a leader, we have to acknowledge that we're responsible for ourselves. We're the only one that we can change. We're the only one, we control our own attitude. We have to take ownership of that, and recognize that everything we say and do sends a message. And to that degree, the example that we make is how we lead in this world. It's how we lead in our families. It's how we lead in our organizations. It's how we lead in our communities. We lead by example.
So I wonder what you're making of the world today. As we're recording this in a global pandemic, so it's special circumstances for everybody. But it seems to me that the message you are sending with your work also is appropriate for when we return back to normal. But I wonder what the return back to normal might require of leaders. What's your speculation around what the realm of leadership will be like once we go to whatever is back to a normal sense of activity again?
I guess the word that comes up first for me is compassion. I think as leaders, we need to first have compassion for ourselves, for those that we work with and who work for us, and understand that, we're people first, and we all have experiences that impact every aspect of our life, and including our work life. So I think we need to see more compassion, which can then lead to better collaboration and more flexibility in how people work. I don't believe we'll ever go back to what we had before the pandemic. Meetings like this on Zoom, and phone calls and virtual training and virtual events are going to continue to be a big part of our lives. And, in talking with many of the clients that I work with, they're seeing that by being compassionate, by understanding what their people need in the organization to continue to be productive and engaged in their work, is some flexibility, right? So understanding that they may have kids at home, they may need to work a different day. Maybe they start at 10 and work later in the evening. But having that compassion to understand people's situations and the flexibility to adjust means that people can stay engaged and connected and feel valued and feel seen and respected by leadership. And their commitment and their loyalty to companies is going to grow from that. And their productivity is going to grow from that as well.
So would you differentiate compassion from empathy, or are they, in your mind, similar and the same?
Well, I do think that they're similar, but they're a little different. And I look at empathy as feeling what somebody else is feeling. And we don't always have that ability. If we haven't had that experience, it's difficult to be empathetic. But we can always be compassionate. We can always be that person that's there and listening and doing our best to understand. We may not be able to completely relate, but we can always show compassion, even if we don't have the ability to be empathetic. So it's a subtle distinction.
Yeah, very an important one, I think, when it comes to thinking about the unleashing again the power of the human potential in an organization. It's sort of a combination of sometimes understanding somebody's point of view while at the same time being able to walk in their shoes.
Right.
and feel what they feel. So maybe it's the dexterity of being able to carry both ideas in the mind at the same time.
Well, Dale Carnegie, one of his principles is to try honestly to see things from the other person's perspective.
Yeah.
And one of the operative words is try, because we can never completely see something from another person's perspective. We all have our own unique history, our own unique experiences and stories. And, building relationships helps us understand them and be in a better position to speak to them in a way that they can hear what we have to say and maybe work with us. But we can never, ever really understand somebody's perspective. We all have a unique one.
So one of my memories of my own experience through the Dale Carnegie experience, and maybe the one that people are most familiar with, is the golden rule, right? Can you tell us a little bit about what the golden rule is?
Well, and I think you're referring to really a series of golden rules that are in the Golden Book, which is the 30 human relations principles that Dale Carnegie wrote about in How to Win Friends and Influence People. And it was really a remarkable book that started out as his text for class. When he started teaching in 1912, there were no books on how to communicate, how to work with people, how to be a successful business person, how to be a leader. So he really started out in a very grassroots way at asking successful leaders what worked. And so How to Win Friends and Influence People is a series of stories that illustrate the power of these human relations principles that are in the Golden Book. And the Golden Book is that distilled knowledge and information. And still, after over 100 years, these principles are central to everything that we teach and encourage people to demonstrate as leaders at Dale Carnegie.
Yeah, I've observed, the 6 or 8 week classes that are done there. They also are infused with high levels of energy, and a lot of noise often coming from the training room. And I know from that must take a lot out of you as the learning facilitator around this. So I wonder what you need to do in order to make sure you are on for every performance here. I'm very interested from a trainer's perspective. Okay. What do you do to keep yourself in that high energy space and be able to bring that to your students?
Well, first of all, I'm completely passionate about what I do, and I believe in these principles. I believe in everything that Dale Carnegie wrote about and in what I'm about to present in a Dale Carnegie experience. So, and thinking about the successes that people have when they apply and not just apply, but live these principles in a genuine way is always encouraging and exciting to me. When I have somebody that comes back into class and says, "Oh my gosh, you can't believe what happened when I was in my staff meeting yesterday," or I've had people say, "This saved my marriage," or "I have a completely different relationship with my children now because of what I've learned." So I hold those results in my heart and in my mind when I go into the classroom, because I know how profound the experience can be. And as far as how I prep, it's, I got to take care of myself, because I need to be rested. I need to be, for me, visualizing the people in the session and seeing them as being open to what we're about to do and be excited about the experience they're going to have. So it's a lot of mental preparation and some rest up front. And oftentimes I'll meditate before class to get to that real centered place. And then just go in with, I guess the key for me that I've learned over my almost 20 years of training is trusting myself, right? Not being locked into the content, but trusting what I've learned and what I know and the facilitation, and really creating an environment that allows people to bring out the best in themselves and to discover for themselves who they are and what they're capable of. So that trust in self and that the process works is so key to preparation.
Yeah, I sometimes, in my observation of you, I said sometimes it's less about being a teacher than it is being a performer in the way that you handle things, because you're so adept at drawing people out, but it takes energy and effort on every person. You're engaging with every individual in your class, and you can see that it takes a tremendous amount of effort and energy to do that. So it feels like it's more of a performance than simply a teaching experience.
Yeah, I guess in some ways, although it's, if you had to look at any performance, I guess you might look at improv, because there's no script, right? We have to take what people throw out, maybe a statement or a response or an experience based on applying what they've learned, and respond, right? There's no script. There's no memorizing language and memorizing the tools and what we're going to say. It's about being responsive in the moment, and that, I think, in and of itself creates a lot of energy and excitement. So it may look like performance, but it's sort of always unfolds organically. And you're right, it's not teaching, it's facilitating discovery, I think.
Yeah, it looks more like improvisational art than it is play. Yeah,
and I always say I learn as much from everybody in the classroom when I'm facilitating as they may be learning from the Dale Carnegie material that I'm bringing into the classroom.
And that's always the greatest of gifts, isn't it? When the teacher is informed by the student and gains as much as they do. So I wonder, as you think about the future of leadership now, it's the pandemic aside, we've talked a little bit about what it's going to take when we get back, but I wonder what you've seen in terms of changing propositions of leadership and the arising challenges of things like demographics and different generations in the workplace. What are some of the things that you're taking away from what the future of leadership might look like, and what will it take to lead in a new world, not just post-pandemically?
Yeah, some highlights, I think, just from observations and conversations over the past 6 months in particular, are that those that have the most flexibility and resilience are going to succeed as leaders, because the pandemic is one experience that we're having to respond to. And unfortunately, there will be others that we have to respond to. So being resilient as an individual is really, really key to be viewed as a leader, because, when we look at leaders, we want to look at somebody that we trust, somebody that we respect, somebody that can remain level-headed and agile in any environment. So I think those are going to be some real key standouts for people that are going to be successful as leaders, and those that have a broad skill set. And most importantly, I think that foundational skill set of people skills and communication skills, so that they can take what they know technically and apply it in the most important ways. That makes sense.
It does make sense. What kind of advice might you offer to a young person coming out of a recent college education and going into the workplace for the first time? What would you advise them that they need to be attentive to, and how might they grow and develop as a leader?
Well, maybe this is kind of selfish, but I would say the best thing anybody could ever do for themselves is take a Dale Carnegie course, so that they could tap into a shameless plug. But that really speaks to the power of again, holding up the mirror, recognizing our strengths, owning them, being proud of them, and leveraging them in any environment, and understanding how powerful we can be with our strengths when we have the ability to communicate effectively with other people, when we understand how critical it is to have relationships that revolve around trust and respect. that those foundational skills are going to serve any new person in the workforce just building their career enormously. I can't tell you how many times I've had people in my classes, my course in effective communications and human relations, say to me, and they could be advanced in their career in their 40s, their 50s, or 60s, say, nobody ever taught me this stuff. Man, I wish I'd had this in my 20s. I wish somebody had told me how important it was to have good relationships and to communicate effectively with these tools in my 20s. So whether it's through a Dale Carnegie course or our own, seeking out others that are good at leading and building relationships and being mentored by them, understanding that that powerful foundation will serve us well is really important.
Yeah, I've learned from my work in leadership development that too often people don't pay attention to what they need to develop until they've actually achieved a leadership position. And very often they find themselves short on many of the skills that they wish to have developed. In many words, in many cases, they got to be a leader because they demonstrated great technical proficiency with the subject matter rather than with these other aspects of leadership. And I feel like if we could find ways for people to tap into what they need to pay attention to, when the leadership call comes, they're far more ready then to assume that responsibility.
Absolutely. I've had individuals in my classes that had their MBA and PhD from the most prestigious schools in the country. And they were, by all means, very successful in their profession. Yet they ran into roadblocks when they didn't have those core foundational human relations skills and communication skills. And when they supported their technical expertise, their expertise in their profession with that, it allowed so much more to flow and for them to flourish in a more powerful way in their career. And it's certainly more satisfying to tap into those skills. So yeah, absolutely.
So that's really the case then, being a lifelong learner, no matter what stage of your career that you're in, right? Constantly being open to learning and growing as a leader in any situation.
Yeah, I think it makes life and our career more exciting as well. The expectation that there's more that I can do, there's more I can learn, there's more that I can do to leverage who I am. And to me, that's exciting. I've always had that approach though. So I've always kind of been a glutton for, how can I get better? Who can I learn from? And what can I do next? So to me, that's energizing, which I guess is no surprise that I ended up in this profession. But it does make everything that we do more exciting when we think of possibilities and don't look at ourselves as finally arriving.
Yeah. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation, but we're concluding our series this year in the podcast with a little bit of insight behind the person on the other side of the glass here. And maybe this is a way for you to demonstrate that openness to learning that you have. So I have 5 questions that I'm going to ask you, and you're going to give me your top of mind reaction to them. Maybe not just one word, but we'll see where it leads. So I have 5 questions that Zach Davis and I had developed for all of our guests. So what is one thing you would most like to do in your life that you have not yet done?
Skydive.
Oh my gosh. Tell me about that. What's appealing?
You know what? When I sit on my deck and I look up at the sky, I'm just enamored with birds and the idea of flight and the freedom of being in the air. So, and my aunt was a skydiver and actually holds a world record with a group of women from back in the 70s. So that's always sounded so scary and energizing all at the same time. So at some point, I'd like to try that.
All right. What point do you think you're going to do it?
Oh, I don't know. I guess you're putting my feet to the fire. How about in the next 5 years?
All right. Well, you'll come back on the show and tell us how it was for you.
Yes, I will.
So my second question, in your opinion, what is one thing that the world needs right now to make it a better place to live?
More compassion. more understanding, and more listening, right? When we listen to each other and listen to understand, we learn a lot about people, and that does a lot to build trust. And I think for us to live together happily and successfully, we need to have more trust and respect. So having compassion and demonstrating that by really listening to people is a really good place to be.
Great. I think I'll know the answer to this next question, as it is with so many of our guests on the show, because they are so well suited for what they do. But let's see if you have the same reaction. If you were back in school today and thinking about starting your career, what would you want to be when you grew up?
Ooh, an artist.
Ooh, what's appealing about that for you?
Because it is the ultimate in self-expression, and I always loved every type of art form growing up, and it just was fun. It felt natural to me. So I think if I had had that mentoring and guidance back when I was much younger, I may have gone into that field. But my creativity comes out in what I do now. So I think fundamentally I'm a creative person. So maybe I wouldn't be an artist. Who knows? I may have ended up using art as a tool in this sort of learning and growing environment.
And there's certainly a connection there, isn't there, with that? And I experienced that myself as a artist and a trainer. Those two worlds come together very easily. Good.
Absolutely.
So question number 4, what hobby or activity outside of your work brings you the most joy?
Well, I would say it's a combination, but both things require me to be outside in nature. I love hiking in the woods with my dog and just appreciating nature and the beauty that's all around me. So I like hiking. I love that the energy of it, and I love gardening. So getting my hands in the dirt and creating an environment that allows plants to blossom and bloom and look beautiful is very satisfying for me. So those are two things that I enjoy spending my time doing, is that gardening and hiking in the woods.
I've enjoyed seeing some of your pictures on Facebook of your garden and the things that you've cultivated in there. It's been very nice to see those things.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot that we see on Facebook, and I tend to put things out there that just make me feel good and make me want to smile. So usually that's my flowers and my dog.
Good. So I'm gonna ask this final question with a bit of a disclaimer to you, because I don't want you to name Dale Carnegie in this answer, because I know that's probably top of your mind for you. But what person, living or dead, has inspired you the most?
Oh boy. I don't think there's any one person, Steve. I think that the people that inspire me the most are children. And the energy and the enthusiasm that they bring to the table, that pure exuberance. Children inspire me more than anything. And I think if we could all be a little more childlike in our lives in that capacity, that we'd be a lot happier.
You think that comes from their innocence and their openness to learning, perhaps?
Yeah, absolutely. And they're they don't have the fear that adults have accumulated over years of people telling them they can't do something. They believe in themselves, and they believe in having fun and feeling good and expressing themselves in authentic ways. And I admire that. And so they inspire me more than any one person.
Great. Well, it's a wonderful answer. Thank you. Well, Ellen, thank you. It's been a real pleasure having you here today. As always, it is to see you. I want to appreciate it very much, all that you have done for organizations around the area here through your work as vice president of the Dale Carnegie franchise in the Philadelphia region. You do fantastic work wherever you go, and very happy to have had this chance to have a conversation with you today and learn a little bit about the way that you make the magic happen in the classroom. So thanks very much for being here today on the Learning Aloud podcast.
Oh, it was my pleasure, Steve. Thank you so much. It was my honor to be able to talk to you during this hour.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much. And my thanks also to Dan Shields for being our producer for today. This has been the Learning Aloud podcast from the University of Pennsylvania.